Welcome back to the channel, guys. We've got another Fiesta video for you today, and today we'll be tackling the rear bumper removal, reinstallation, as well as how to replace those little plastic tabs that sometimes break off when you remove the rear bumper. So we're going to tackle all that today, starting off by lifting the car. Now you can do this without lifting the car, but it does make it a lot easier. So it's up to you. I'm going to lift the car and move the wheels in order to show it better on video, but you could definitely do this with the wheels still on the ground, as long as you can kind of fit your fingers behind there. I'm going to jack up the car, put it on jack stands, and take the wheels off. For safety, I like to chalk off the front wheels, place jack stands under the rear pinch welds, and then once I get the wheels off, I'll also slide those underneath the car as an added protection in case anything drastic were to happen. We can now start the process of removing the rear bumper. We'll start off by opening the rear hatch here, and then we'll go and turn to the rear wheel wells where we can remove these little plastic clips. These are the stock ones that have this little screw at the top, which you remove. I replace these with different ones that I got from a set. If you're going to do this job, there's a good chance you might break some of these little plastic clips, and as such, it's a good idea to buy some new ones. Here's a set I bought off Amazon for about $10–15. It has every single plastic clip you could possibly need, and it also comes with a handy clip remover tool, which might come in handy for this job. I replaced the screw ones with these little pop-off ones. It doesn't really matter, just remove them, and then once you get these out of the way, you can pull the fender liner off to the side, which will reveal an 8mm screw which holds the bumper to the bracket here. Mine's missing, but if you look at the other side, it would look something like this. Once we get those out of the way, we can then turn our attention to the two T20 Torx screws holding the rear bumper underneath the hatch here. It's also a very good idea to keep track of all your screws, maybe in a little metallic thing like this, in order to make sure you don't lose anything. Underneath the bumper, we have these two little wheel screws that hold these bumper brackets onto the body. Go ahead and just screw those off. And then on either side of the bumper underneath it, there'll be two more little push pins that need to be pulled out. These are the ones I replaced. The one you have in there will be one you just simply pry off. At this point, we can start removing the bumper. It's held on by little plastic tabs along the sides, 4 more tabs along the middle here, and then 6 more tabs on the bottom over here along the side. I like to start from one side and then slowly pry up. You're gonna have to use a good amount of force here. Now, I had already removed this bumper before and broken some of those little plastic tabs. I will show you later how to replace those. So it came off a little easier for me, but just kind of work your way around. Be very gentle if you want to try to avoid breaking those tabs if possible. Sort of pry up on one side, lifting and pulling the bumper as needed to sort of align the tabs in a way to get them off, and then slowly working your way from right to left or left to right. The middle tabs may pop off. They might also stay on there until you get the side one off. It doesn't really matter. I like to just kind of work from one side to the other, whatever works best for you. Again, you're going to have to use a little bit more force than what feels comfortable in order to get it off, but it will eventually come off. Just try to be as careful as you can to try to avoid breaking those tabs. Again, you can replace those tabs, and we'll show you how to do so in just a moment here, but it's better if you can avoid it. Now that we have the bumper off, we can go ahead and inspect the bumper mounting tabs and holes. If you see here, the holes, there should be 6 of them. These are pretty stout. They usually don't break. However, what does tend to break are the actual tabs that hold those holes. Now, as you see here, I only have 2 remaining. There should be 6 on each side. These tend to break off as you remove the bumper. Luckily for us, it's not that difficult to replace these tabs by replacing the brackets that have them on them. All you'll need is to order these 2 brackets. I'll give you the part numbers below. They're between $15 and $20 each, not a ton. And then you'll need a drill, some drill bits, as well as a rivet gun and some rivets. This does seem a little daunting at first, but I promise you it's really straightforward. Now, the size of drill bit you'll need depends on the rivet. The rivets here are 1/4 inch rivets, and so I like to use something a little bit smaller. I'm using a 15/64 over here. You want to make sure that the drill bit is smaller than the hole the rivets go into, and 15/64 works, but bigger than the little indentation on the rivet itself. Once you have a drill bit that works, you can go ahead, load it up in your drill, and then start drilling out the rivet. The secret here is applying a good amount of force, but also going nice and slow. So push against the rivet, go slow, be careful. Eventually the rivet will just pop out once you break through it. Each bracket has 4 rivets you'll need to drill out in order to get them off, and then you can go ahead and remove the brackets. Now, these rivets I have here are ones I had already replaced because I tried this first before showing this video. The rivets that were on my car to start with were not fully pulled on. They were loose, which meant that a lot of them were spinning. If your rivet does spin, there's a few things you can do. One thing you can do is try to punch it out with a punch once you get a little bit of it drilled out. This may work. However, it may still remain stuck in there, as you can see here. So what I like to do is sort of use a screwdriver to pry the rivet off. I'm using a Torx screwdriver in the middle to sort of lift it, and then a screwdriver on the side to pry it off. Be very careful here as to not to damage your paint. You can damage the bracket since that's coming off, but you want to be very careful with your paint. There's a few things we're going to want to do while we have the bumper off. The first thing is to get all the broken pieces of rivet out from behind the bumper. They're going to be behind these little flaps. You can just remove them as I just showed and then pull out the bumper rivet pieces. You're also going to want to inspect the holes that hold the rivets on. These might get pulled up a little bit, as you can see. What you can try to do is just sort of use a hammer with a rag and sort of tap them down a little bit. If they're pulled up a little bit, it's fine. It'll still install correctly. The more important thing is that they fit the new rivets. Sometimes when they pull off, they'll deform a bit and then the hole will be too small. So you want to make sure that the hole is the proper size. You'll also want to go ahead and inspect these little bits of tape that cover holes in the body. This tape can get brittle or it can get pulled up, as you see here, and this can allow water into the cabin. I do have a video on how to look for water leaks in your car because that's a common issue. You may want to check that out, but this is one potential thing to look for. We can then go ahead and get our new parts. Here are the part numbers. They'll be below as well. There is a right bracket and a left bracket, and these will both just rivet back onto the car in order to remount the bumper with all 6 mounting tabs. We can now start the process of reattaching the mounting brackets onto the car. You're going to want to first make sure that the holes line up with the brackets, and then once you're satisfied with that, I like to use a rivet to hold the bracket in place while I attach another rivet into a different hole in order to hold it there. Attaching the rivets onto the car is actually a pretty straightforward process. It may seem daunting at first, but it really isn't. You will need a hand riveter like this. These are available online for about $20, $25, along with the rivets you may need. You can load up the rivet by opening the jaws, place the hand riveter with the rivet inside the hole, and then start squeezing on the jaws. It will take a good amount of force and it will get progressively harder as you go. And then eventually after 5 or 6 squeezes of the jaw, the rivet will break off, or rather the center part will break off, leaving the rivet in place. Here's the whole process one more time from start to finish, and you can then go ahead and repeat this process 4 times per side to mount both brackets. There's a few while we're here things we're going to want to do since we have the bumper off. One is to check these drain lines and plugs. This connects to the rear sunroof tray and can get clogged up, causing a water leak in the rear hatch of the car. If you've seen my other video on how to diagnose the water leaks, you know this is a very likely culprit. If that is good, then go ahead and remount your flaps over here. And then you're going to also want to check your reflector. Mine was broken, so I decided to replace it since I was placing an order from Ford anyways. It's just held on by two little clips behind the bumper, which you can squeeze together and pop out. A new rear reflector was only about $20–25. Hey. You're rebuilding now. Basically. Oh my gosh. The good deal's gone away. Yep. Even my neighbors are now acutely aware of Ford's questionable build quality in some of their cars. Now that we have the reflector put back in, I'm going to go ahead and just clean off my exhaust tips since I have it fully exposed, and then we can start the process of reattaching the rear bumper. Just like pulling the bumper off, you're going to want to go ahead and start at one side and work your way to the other. You want to line up the tabs with the mounting holes and then push them on. Now, I'm using a screwdriver here, and I'll show you in a moment how I do this. You want to be very, very careful if you choose to use this method. It did work very well for me, but again, you want to be extremely careful not to damage your paint. Once you get the tabs lined up, you can sort of just pound them back in or push them in, and they should clip into place. You will need not a ton of force, but a little bit. And then once you have one side, you can work on the other. If you see here my screwdriver method, use the screwdriver to gently pry out on the mounting holes, which will then fit into the tabs. Again, you want to be super careful here. You may want to actually wrap your screwdriver in tape to avoid damaging the paint, but I was able to do this without damaging my paint at all, as long as you're very careful. Push in those tabs, and your bumper is almost all the way back on. I like to leave the middle tabs for last. There's 4 of them. This allows me to move the bumper up and down a little bit in order to align the side tabs. Once you're satisfied with the alignment, go ahead and push in the middle tabs, and you are basically done. Go ahead and tighten back up those T20 screws, and then attach all the other attachments underneath the bumper. Reattach everything underneath the fender liner, your 8mm screw, as well as the 2 push pins that hold the fender liner to the car. If you remove them, you can go ahead and put your wheels back on, and then torque down your lug nuts to 75 to 85 foot-pounds. We can then go ahead and lower our car, and we are all done. I hope this video was of some help to someone. Thank you guys for watching, and if you haven't done so, please consider subscribing. I would greatly appreciate it. Catch you next time.